All right, let's talk about the dark web. You've probably heard all sorts of crazy stories about it, right? It's this place that's surrounded by myth and, honestly, a lot of fear. But the reality, it's so much more complicated than that. So today, we're going to dive in and separate the facts from the fiction.
So let me just start by asking you a question. What if I told you that everything you think of as the internet, Google, your social media feeds, your favorite shopping sites, what if that was just the tiny, visible tip of a gigantic digital iceberg? Because, well, that's pretty much the reality of the situation. And this chart, wow, it really puts that scale into perspective. That little 10% slice, that's the surface web. That's everything a search engine can find. The other 90%, that's the deep web, this huge, hidden world. And tucked away inside that, as we're about to see, is the even more secret layer, the dark web. Okay, so to really get a handle on this, we need to break down these different layers. Because it's not just one big, scary, anonymous blob. It's actually a structured part of how the internet works. This table here does a great job of breaking it down. You've got the surface web, which is public and huge, but the deep web is way, way bigger. Think about it. Your email inbox, your online banking, your company's private network, that's all deep web. It's not sinister, it's just content that's behind a login wall. The dark web, though, that's a tiny, tiny fraction of the whole thing. It's intentionally hidden, and you need special software just to get there. And that is the key difference. So, the big question is, how does this hiding even work? How does it stay so secret? Well, it all comes down to a really clever piece of tech that was built for one thing and one thing only: total anonymity. Let's see how it works. The key to the whole thing is a tool called Tor, which actually stands for the Onion Router. And get this, it was originally developed by the U.S. Naval Research Lab to protect their intelligence communications. Now it's free, open-source software that anyone can use to browse the web anonymously. And this is exactly where that whole onion idea makes perfect sense. Tor takes your data and wraps it in multiple layers of encryption, just like an onion. Then it bounces that data packet through a random series of volunteer computers all around the world. Each one of those computers, or relays, only peels off one layer of encryption to see where to send it next. So by the time it reaches its destination, no single point along the way knows both who you are and where you were going. You just arrive totally anonymous. It's pretty genius. But here's the other half of the magic, and this is crucial. It's not just the users who can be anonymous, the websites can be too. These sites use special .onion addresses, and they live entirely inside the Tor network. This means the physical location of the server hosting the site is hidden, creating what are called hidden services. So, when you create a tool this powerful for anonymity, you end up creating a world of extreme contrasts. It's a tool that can be used for some incredible good and also for some really significant harm. This is where we get past the tech and into the messy, human reality of it all. And this slide just lays out the two faces of the dark web perfectly. On one side, you've got legitimate, even heroic uses. Journalists use it to protect their sources. Activists in authoritarian countries use it to organize without being found. Even major news outlets like the BBC have their own .onion sites to get around censorship. But on the other side, that exact same anonymity is exploited for illegal marketplaces, selling stolen data, and ransomware gangs. It's the same tool, used for polar opposite reasons. And this is the point that often gets lost in the headlines. For a lot of people, the dark web isn't about crime at all. It's about safety. It's a digital lifeline for people who absolutely need to communicate without fear of being watched or punished. For them, anonymity is a shield. But of course, where there's crime, there's law enforcement. And the history of the dark web is basically one long, high-stakes game of cat and mouse, with authorities constantly figuring out new ways to unmask these hidden services and the people behind them.
This timeline shows some of the biggest busts. The story really hit the mainstream with the takedown of the infamous Silk Road back in 2013. But the pattern just continued. There was the massive international operation that took down both Alphabet and Hansa, and more recently, the fall of the absolutely colossal Russian marketplace Hydra and even Nemesis Market. Each one of these was a huge victory for law enforcement.
And the sheer scale of these operations is just staggering. I mean, take Hydra. Before it got shut down, it's estimated to have processed over $5 billion in Bitcoin transactions. This isn't just a few people in a basement, it's a global criminal enterprise. And just look at the growth on this chart. Silk Road had maybe 20,000 users. A few years later, Alphabet had 10 times that. And by 2022, Hydra had a registered user base of 17 million. So even with all the takedowns, the demand and the sophistication of these markets just keep growing.
So how do they keep coming back? Well, they adapt. They evolve. Every time law enforcement figures out a way to track them, the criminals find a new way to hide. They're shifting from Bitcoin to even more private cryptocurrencies like Monero. They're trying out decentralized markets where there's no single server you can seize. Some are even moving off the dark web entirely and onto heavily encrypted messaging apps. It's a constant evolution.
And all of this, it brings us right to the core philosophical debate at the very heart of the dark web. And that's this fundamental tension between our right to privacy and our collective need for security.
Let's be perfectly clear on this point because it's super important. Using Tor is not illegal. The act of seeking out anonymity online is not by itself a crime. Anonymity is a tool, and like any powerful tool, its morality is all in how it's used, not in the fact that it exists.
And this right here, this is the central conflict. The exact same technology that protects a journalist's source from a dictator is the one that shelters a criminal from the police. You can't really weaken it for one without also weakening it for the other.
And so that leaves us with this final, really profound question. In a world with more and more surveillance, but also more sophisticated crime, how do we strike that right balance? There are no easy answers here, but understanding the technology and understanding the stakes for everyone involved is the absolute most important first step.